Hi, everyone. I am sitting in my closet. I've been clearing out a space under my stairs. Let's see, I've got coming down to a peak there or a point. Um, anyway, and I was cleaning out my closet. This has all been storage, and I've been thinking about a lot of things. And earlier, I was working on my blog, and I came across a post I wrote a while ago, and it's something I would like to discuss here. It's I'm going to kind of read the blog, read what I wrote a little bit, and then I will come back and either discuss it or maybe I'll just fill in as I go. But it really struck me when I reread it again today that I think it's as pertinent today as it is ever. And this is something that I experienced. So I'm going to read the blog and go from there. So, okay, I wrote this post. When did I write this? January 2nd. Thank you, Lila, for moving my computer. 2019. So I wrote it quite a while ago. This happened when my son Tyler, probably about 4.5, maybe 5. So he was just a little guy. Well, let me think. So he wasn't walking yet, and he started walking with his walker at 4.5. So he must have been 4. Because this was pre-walker even. So 3.5 to 4, right in there. Anyway, on the day that I wrote this blog, I had read an article called "It's the Hidden Disabilities That Keep Kids Out of Church." And it really, reading this, it was a recent blog as of 2019. And it really stirred a bunch of emotions in me because of an experience that I had when the boys were really little. Like I said, Tyler was 3.5, maybe 4 max. We were living in Traverse City, and we attended a well-known area church. His church had a disabilities outreach program for the hearing impaired. And, so it was really nice because there was a service that they could come in and there was somebody doing sign and through the whole service. And it's really was a very, very cool program that they had. We knew the head pastor and his wife. They were friends with an aunt and uncle of mine. My uncle's also the pastor of a church. And, so we had some familiarity with these people. We weren't very close or anything. And we had attended the church for about a year, maybe a little more. And, but we weren't there every single Sunday because, we were a young family with 2 young kids, and my ex-husband was a journalist, so he worked really odd hours. And anyway, I'm going to get back to this. We weren't particularly active members, but we had attended for more than a year when this happened. I took Tyler to church that morning. Brian had stayed home with our son Logan, who was not feeling well. At this point in life, I was in a very fragile state emotionally. I was contemplating divorce and all of the ramifications of that. And, just emotionally, I was pretty fragile. And, so I really needed church. And during the music portion, Tyler fell and bumped his chin on a chair, and he started fussing. So I got up, took him to the nursery for his age group, and then I returned back to the sanctuary. Um, like so many churches in the United States, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but you get, when you take your kid to the nursery, you get a number. And then if they need you to come back to the nursery or the Sunday school room or whatever, they would simply flash your number up on a screen in the sanctuary. And that was an easy way to just let somebody know, okay, this child needs some attention. So Tyler's number popped up on the screen. So I left the sanctuary again and I went back to check on him. He was still fussing and just wasn't settling down. So I decided it was time to leave. We were in the hallway. I was holding Tyler, and the pastor's wife stopped me. And she kind of came up to me, and it was you could tell she had something to say to me. It was not a it was in an aggressive manner, in a purposeful, I'm going to have this discussion manner. And she said, we're not equipped to handle kids like that. And nodded at Tyler. And I'm like what? Crying? She went on to say they don't have enough volunteers to have one person dedicated to taking care of just Tyler. And basically it was, we don't want you here. She made it clear Tyler was not welcome in their program. I was stunned, absolutely shocked. I don't know what I said in response. I can't. Yeah, I don't remember. I was shocked that a church, the wife of a pastor, would approach me in all of this. Anyway, I took Tyler. I walked out to the car. I buckled him in, turned on the car so it's warm. And I just sat in that parking lot and cried. I just sobbed. I was stunned because I had just been kicked out of a church because my disabled child, who had done nothing wrong but cry because he hurt himself, was not welcome there. I went home and I processed it for a bit. And I called my parents and they talked to my aunt and uncle, and there was some discussion, and we did talk then to the church. And the pastor and his wife came to our home later that week, and he did apologize. He said it was handled wrong. She never said a word. She sat there very stoically, not a word. And so we had a very pointed and civil conversation. They left, and I never went back to that church. I never will. And for a long time, I didn't share this story because I didn't want to hurt Christianity. I didn't want there to be any bad image of a church. But, that church hurt me, deeply, deeply hurt me. So that now, almost 30 years later, I still feel that pain, that shock, that disbelief. Tyler, for those of you who don't know, my son Tyler was born at 24 weeks gestation. He was 1 pound, 5 ounces when he was born. And when he was born, there were prayer chains that went out all over the country, and actually all over the globe. He was on prayer chains and people were praying for him. And there were Catholic nuns that were praying for him, and different churches, different, there was an army storming heaven to save his life. I mean, we were pretty connected at that point within our church system. And so we had all of these people storming heaven praying, and this church says he's not welcome. They couldn't see that there was ministry right in front of them, and the door was slammed in our face. Now, I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about, okay, so what if they said, listen, if she had come to me and said, we need help in the nursery, or how can we help you? How can we help you with a child with a disability? How can we serve you? I would have helped. I would have jumped right in. I'm a joiner. I'm an organizer. I'm a helper. I would have been right there to do something and to make it work, because that's what churches are supposed to do. But I was never offered the opportunity. I was just simply turned away. I don't want to think that all churches are like this. I know they're not. And as time has gone by, like I said, we're almost 30 years later from my experience. And I know that there are churches that are very inclusive now, and there are, many wonderful things. But the reality is, challenges with disabilities and going out in public, especially with younger children and with sensory integration issues or autism, or there's a host of things. It still happens. It's still hard to go out in public. Disabilities that can't be seen are difficult. If Tyler had been in his wheelchair that day, if I'd rolled him into church and he was in a wheelchair, and he'd hurt himself, and I'd push the wheelchair in, it's obvious there's a disability. So if you see somebody in a wheelchair, or with a walker, or with a cane, or in this case, a church with hearing impaired, it's easier to give grace if something happens, if somebody acts out of line, if there's not, or whatever. It's very obvious, okay, there's an issue here. Where with something like autism, or so many disabilities. I mean, the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which I have, is a hidden disability. You can't see it. You can't see that I am in pain every single day of my life. And I'm sorry, I have this little monster is helping me. Here, you can chew on this. She's part of my disability outreach. Anyway, it's hard when you can't see. People don't understand. They don't give you the same amount of grace. And in bringing this back into the church, Jesus, who these were Christian churches, so they, these Christian churches are saying Jesus is our example. Well, Jesus hung with the undesirables of society. The religious leaders are the ones that rejected him, because he was against the man-made rules, the restrictions that the religious leaders were putting on that were not necessarily of God. And while I can look back now and say, yeah, it's that church's loss that they did not bring me in, because if they had asked, I would have helped them build one heck of a program that could have helped a lot of people in the community. At that point, we were very involved with organizations, through the school and stuff, networking with other families with young children with disabilities. And that was my job for a while. So it's something that was really, really needed. And I don't know if it ever made a change in that church. I don't know. I've never gone back. But I really hope that if you've heard this, or you know a church or an organization or anything like that, please take time to look around and talk to those who have family members with a disability. It may be that if you had a church member that could come stay with the person with the disability so that the caregiver could come to church, get a break, for a respite for an hour or two, or set up some churches have nursing rooms where mothers, if you've got brand new babies and they need to nurse or whatever, you can go into that private nursery, and there's usually a TV or a speaker in there or something, so you can still participate and hear the service or whatever, and yet your crying baby isn't going to affect everybody else or whatever. There's all kinds of things that can be done. Ways to bring families with children with disabilities in. And this is something that has it has impacted my soul since it happened. We had situations in a McDonald's or in public. Oh my gosh, we had one unbelievable trip to the mall once with a autistic child in full autism meltdown. And, and it's okay. We get through it, we go on. But if you take a moment to look around and ask, how can we make this better? How can we make these events better? A community, if we're holding community events, how can we make this better or more accessible or anything like that? I expect more out of a church. I expect more out of people who claim to wish to do God's will, because they failed. They failed monumentally. And I hope that they learned from what they did to me, how they hurt me. And I truly hope that anybody that hears this thinks about it and how they can help work things for their communities. I'm going to go back here because I actually haven't been looking at the screen at all. I've been looking at my blog posts so I could remember what I was going to talk about. But just think, just really think, and please reach out. I was not somebody who would ask for help. I never ask for help. And that's a failing of mine. Absolutely. I don't reach out and say, hey, I'm drowning here. I'll be there for anybody else. But when it comes to myself, I don't like to ask for help. But if somebody had offered and said, hey, maybe you need a break, maybe, at that time I was in a really bad marriage. My ex was not a bad guy. He's a really good guy. But he wasn't a good husband, not for me. And I really wish that this community that was supposed to be there as a support for me. I wish they had been. And I hope that anybody that sees this takes this lesson and remembers it and thinks about what they can do to help others in the future. So, anyway, Lila, yes, I see you. These are this has been bouncing around my head in my closet as I've been working on chores today. I hope everyone's having a good day. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thank you much.